Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Condolences upon the days of Fatimiyya, the days of the martyrdom, the shahadat of Siddiqa Kubra, Fatimatu Zahra salamullah alayha, to all the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us strength and tawfiq that we fulfill our responsibility towards these days by participating, by attending the majalises held in our Husainiyas and Masajid. To continue on the topic of Islamic spirituality and thought, we were discussing the Ash'ari school, the Ash'ariyya or the Ash'arites. As we mentioned earlier, that the Al-Ash'ariyya were an offshoot of the Mu'tazilites, and we do find that within the framework of the Mu'tazili and the Ash'arites philosophy or theology, how the Imams were participating when it was required for the protection of the core belief of Islam and Quran. Few points that we wanted to highlight in regards to the Mu'tazilite and the Ash'arites. The Mu'tazili believe that they were those who believe in the free will to the maximum capacity. In the broad sense, I will just mention that they believe that God have created the creation and He had left the creation free, and man is free to practice and to do whatever he wants, and eventually he will be accountable to God. God cannot intervene in the creation. Then on the contrary, you have Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, who talks about completely opposite, that it's the issue of Jabr, meaning that man is not free at all, but God is the one who is in full control. He's the one who controls it. They were against any form of tashbih and tanzih in regards to understanding God. They were who do not really promote the use of reason within their framework. They were the one who do not really believe in anthropomorphism. So therefore we find quite diverse to what the initial Mu'tazilites were. The Ash'arites were more of a Jabri, and the Mu'tazilites were more of an ikhtiyari, where it means more of a free will. Obviously, to compare these two thoughts, we have the Shia thought or the Imami thought, which is it's in between. It's not Jabr and it's not ikhtiyar, but it is something Amr bain al-Amrain. There is that overall God, all powerful, and have the knowledge and power to intervene and in full control, but at the same time He has given man ikhtiyar to act freely. So if he is acting, he is indeed acting by the power and of God, but he is accountable for that. God have given him that power. God have that power to take away any minute He wants, but this man, this individual have that ikhtiyar choice to do whatever he wants, and he will be accountable for that. You would find many Sufi figures belonging to the Ash'ari thought. For example, you have Muhammad al-Ghazali, who was one of the renowned and well-known figure within the Islamic scholastics, and he's well known in the West as well. And many other, you would find that they were Ash'ari. Then, as the deterioration of the Khilafat and the coming to power of the Fatimids, if you look at how the Ash'arites' power diminish, then you have Baghdad becoming the seat of Shia learning, where Sayyid Murtaza and Sayyid Razi, these two brothers who became the founders of school in Baghdad, and their student is Sheikh Mufid. Then obviously this is the time period we are talking about where the Fatimi dynasty, which was an Shia Ismaili dynasty, were in power, once again emphasizing upon the Imami thought, Imami Kalam, Imami theology, the relationship of the Imam with the Prophet, and the relationship of the Imam as Hujjat, as a proof, as a Khalifa of God. So this Kalam, this theology came into more of a power, so to speak. Then you have the Buyid dynasty in Iran and parts of Iraq as well. Once again, the Buyid dynasty was also a Shia dynasty which was supportive of the Shia thought. Then if we move further, how this Islamic thought developed, this was the early sort of development of Kalam, early development of philosophy. Then gradually it gets into the Shia Kalam, Khaja Nasiruddin Tusi, Sheikh Tusi himself, the founder of the Hawza of Najaf. See, once Baghdad becomes the seat of knowledge for the Shias, founded by Sayyid Murtaza and Sayyid Razi, and then eventually you have Sheikh Mufid, and then the student of them you have Sheikh Tusi, Sheikh Taif, Sheikh Tusi, where the invasion of Baghdad takes place from the Mughals. The destruction of the libraries in Baghdad takes place, and then Sheikh Tusi moves to Najaf and founds the seminary of Najaf, where once again he started educating, exercising his thought in relation or in regards to philosophy. Many books of Kalam that are taught today in the Hawza is from Sheikh Tusi. Eventually then it reaches to the point of Khaja Nasiruddin Tusi, once again the second Tusi, where the book which is very famous, Kitab al-Tajreed, which is taught in the seminary today, once again on Kalam. Then you have Allama Hilli after that, Abdul Razak al-Lahiji, then all of these are the great Shia, few names of the few great Shia theologians. Then this is in regards to the Kalam. Then having said in regards to the Kalam, you have the philosophy as well, which is different to Kalam. In philosophy as well, you would find great philosophers. Once again, the Prophet indicating that one, if it is required that one have to go to China in order to seek knowledge, do so. So this is pointing out to that how knowledge was considered to be the driving force, how knowledge was important in Islam and to the Prophet, and how much he engaged and entertained knowledge, how much he promoted knowledge. So therefore, when it comes to philosophy as well, we have a unique history of Islamic philosophy. Many tend to think that Islamic philosophy is nothing but an extension of Greek philosophy, or is nothing but a continuation of the Greek philosophy. No doubt we do find many traditions which support the Greek understanding of God, of existence, such as we find a hadith from our sixth Imam who praises Plato, who praises Aristotle, and talks about that they were the men of God and they invited people to Tawheed by philosophical principles. This doesn't mean that Islamic philosophy is something which have robbed or which have borrowed from Greek philosophy. Islamic philosophy furthered the Greek understanding, the Platonic understanding, the Aristotelian understanding on the basis of Quran and Sunnah, on the basis of Quran and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So the approach of a Muslim scientist, a Muslim philosopher to philosophy wasn't that he would learn Greek philosophy and then he would come to the understanding of philosophy within Islam. Through the specs or through the eyes of a Greek philosopher, he would see Islamic texts such as the Quran and Sunnah. Rather, it is the opposite. It is the Quran and the Hadith and the teachings of Masumeen and the explanation of Tawheed in the sermons of the Imams, the explanation of Tawheed in the du'as of the Masumeen alayhim salam. That becomes the base, that becomes the source to really understand Tawheed more in a philosophical way. Then you have the comparison of the Greek philosophy, with all these that we have. If it kind of correlates, if it helps each other, that's well and good. If it doesn't help each other, that means that if it reaches to a certain extent, Platonic ideas, then further to that Platonic thought, illuminist, more of a profound and deeper understanding is added on to this Platonic idea. Then that is why you find scholars such as Mullah Sadruddin Shirazi. Then you find scholars, philosophers such as Sohrawardi, who took the Platonic thought further down, who developed it, who kind of crystallized it in a more unique and beautiful way. Then you have the peripatetic, the Aristotelian thought within the Islamic sort of thought. You have the early peripatetic with Al-Kindi, who was considered to be Abu Yaqub Al-Kindi, a philosopher of the Arabs. He was known as the first philosopher. If one looks at the history of Islamic philosophy, the first philosopher was known as Al-Kindi. Now, his works, he took the understanding of the Aristotelian approach towards Tawheed, towards prophecy, towards akhlaqiyat, towards ethics. He took that. He worked under that framework. And many of his treatises today that we find being read, criticized by many of the philosophers. Then after that you have Al-Farabi. Abu Nasr Al-Farabi is considered to be the second of the great early philosophers of Islam. Basically, once again, Al-Kindi came not from Baghdad or Iraq, but Al-Kindi was actually Al-Farabi. Kindi came from Iraq, but Al-Farabi came from Khurasan, was from the east. Now, Al-Kindi, we are talking about the period of 11th, 10th Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salam. Obviously, this is very early period. So the philosophy and the philosophers were already found within the Islamic sort of within Islam. They were philosophers. They were theologians. They were spiritual masters who provided guidance, who provided knowledge, who debated, who discussed with their own methodology, with their own understanding of Islamic principles and values, and this points out to, once again, as I said, the richness that exists within Islam. Then after that, Al-Farabi, who was known as the second teacher, the first teacher is known as the Aristotle. Then after Farabi, you would find the development of the Ismaili philosopher Ibn Sina, very famous, known as Avicenna. In terms, now we are looking at philosophy at present. We are not looking at the scientific sort of inventions that was by the hands of the Muslims. And as a matter of fact, the Renaissance and the Western science are indebted to the Islamic scientists who have developed, who have written many works in science, which will, in mathematics, in astronomy, in pharmacology, which we will look further in our future programs, their contributions. Then you have Ibn Sina as a philosopher. Then you have Ibn Rushd, another philosopher. Once again, we are talking about the peripatetic sort of approach towards the philosophy. Then obviously the Platonic ideas, as we said, it was Sohrawardi, with the great famous work of Sohrawardi, which is known as the Illuminist philosopher. Then within the Iranian sort of contribution towards philosophy is the famous school of Isfahan, which was established by Mir Damad, who was the father-in-law of Mullah Sadra, a great philosopher. His works today present in the libraries, in the Islamic libraries. Then his student and also his son-in-law, Saduddin Shirazi, his unique compilation of the famous work in philosophy, which is known as Asfar Arba, which is known as Al-Hikmatul Muta'aliyah, which is transcendental philosophy. He took philosophy on a completely different level. He composed spirituality with philosophy together, which was quite unique, and that's why it was known as transcendental philosophy. And he wrote many books in philosophy. Hikmat was something that he took the idea or the understanding of it from Shaykh al-Ishraq, the Illuminist school, which once again in comparison to seem to be Platonic. And Hikmat, which is known as wisdom, this is where he worked on Mullah Sadra, and then he promoted this thought of transcendental philosophy. So in conclusion, what I would like to point out to is the Islamic spirituality. You have the Sufis who kind of were pulled and attracted by the nur of Islam, by the nur of the Quran, by the nur of Amirul Mu'mineen, by the nur of the Prophet, and they came up with whatever limited understanding perhaps they had, but they were a source of guidance to many, to keep them on the path of Islam within that sort of belief system of Tawheed, of Nabuwat and of Qiyamat. Then you have the Kalam, the theology, once again Amirul Mu'mineen, the first Mutakallim, then the Mu'tazilites, then the Asharites, and then eventually you have the Shia scholars of Kalam, because of how things developed. It's a gradual development that we see that, from then you have the philosophy once again. Within the philosophical framework as well, you have Al-Kindi, you have Al-Farabi, you have Ibn Sina within the peripatetic Aristotelian style. Then you have the Platonic, where you have Shah Sohrawardi and Mir Damad, Mullah Sadra, so on, the school of Isfahan. So this is a brief history, and at the same time their contribution towards the Muslim community that we find. And we hope to continue on this theme, and next week what we will look at is that Islam, which is also, as we said, is a vast civilization. When we are talking about civilization, it means that it has provided many sciences. We just talked about the humanities, if you want to talk about kalam and philosophy and spirituality, but in terms of the science as well, we would find mathematics, astronomy, astrology, medicine, pharmacology, and many other different history of nature, and many other different ulum, sciences that Islam have contributed, which we will look into in our next program. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will hope to see you again. And once again, in the end, I would like to extend my condolences to all of the mu'mineen, to the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the Imam of our time returns back and return the haqq of Siddiqa Kubra, and she also awaits for the return of her grandson, because she was that founder or that personality who clarify the haqq and batil. The haqq and batil is clarified through her. That is why the Prophet have clearly mentioned that the ghazab of Fatima is the ghazab of God. The anger of God is the anger of Fatima, and the anger of Fatima is the anger of God. Whosoever is pleased with Fatima, whosoever is Fatima pleased with, God will be pleased with them as well. So she becomes the dividing factor of haqq and batil. Haqq and batil is discerned through her. So once again, when we look into the history, how she was treated, it is quite sad. It is very sorrowful that when a lady whose father have passed away, people will go to her house with flowers, with food. This is the culture, this is the etiquettes of Muslim. But when we look at the history, how they attended to her after the demise of the father, where people complain, ask Fatima to either cry at night or in the morning, or how they came to the house of Fatima and touched the door of Fatima. Instead of bringing flowers to the house of Fatima to give condolences, they brought fire and touched the door of Fatima, the door for which the Prophet said that Jibreel attended. Jibreel gives salams to that door. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our majalises and our tears and our love, and return us in abundance in this dunya and also in the hereafter. And the best dua to ask is that we be with Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in this dunya, barzakh, and also hereafter. And also our marhumeen, inshallah, those who are not with us, our relatives, our family members, our fathers and mothers, if they are not here, if they are alive, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them and give them health and give them a good life with the love of Ahl Bayt alayhi salam. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you next week again. And goodbye and good night from Spiritual Perspectives Hidayat. Thank you.